Hi, thank you so much for joining me for Yarn Bites with Cha-Cha Knitting and Knots. I'm Nora, and it's a hot, gloomy, muggy day in South Texas. But here we are, just finished a beautiful sweater for my daughter. And all projects, as you know, have a story. So I'm going to tell you my story behind this beautiful sweater and give you a little critique of the yarn and also of the design. This sweater, I used a pattern called Element. It's designed by Kirsten Johnston, and she's an architect based in Melbourne, Australia, and her designs have an urban edge, you know, kind of a hipster edge, and that would appeal to a young person. My daughter's in her mid-30s. She just got married, and we went to visit her and, of course, attend the wedding, Salt Lake City, Utah. And beautiful mountains, spring, flowers. It was gorgeous, even though the wedding was mid-July. It was nice and cool. Rainstorm blew in, cleared the air. It was just gorgeous in time for the ceremony. So let me tell you about this sweater. I would call it advanced. There are a lot of techniques. It's been described as a master class in a sweater. There were a lot of techniques that I had never used before, but you know what? It ended up with a really, really pretty sweater. Really worth the effort and sometimes frustration. I learned how to do an I-cord cast off on the cuffs. You can see there's no ribbing, so it's very smooth, very sleek. The arms are super slim, super slim. Also, we have an I-cord for the drawstring. The cowl, it's a nice slouchy cowl. Keep your neck warm but loose so it doesn't choke you. I also learned how to do a bind off hem, and it makes a really pretty chain. If you can see that, it's a lovely chain. I had just done a whip stitch on live stitches, and it really looked messy. It really looked raggedy. So we have a very pretty effect. And then also here's lace. Lots and lots of lace. Kind of a lattice effect. And also the bind off. The I-cord bind off. On the bottom, there's no ribbing to continue that sleek look. And you'll notice that the lace on the back is wider than the lace in the front. And the reason for that is because there's a crescent shape. It actually bows in the front, and it's a little longer in the back. The shape of the sweater is an A-line. It's for the size medium, or 33.5-inch bust. There were 240 stitches. It's worked in the round. So it kind of feels like it's taking forever because there are 5 stitches to the inch. So you work and you work and you work before you start to feel like you're making any progress. Instructions, they're very, very detailed. And you can see the A-line. You can see how there's a little bit of a crescent there. The slim sleeves. And then over here we have the round neckline before you add the cowl. Now, unfortunately, I didn't receive the errata or the corrections for the lace until about 3 weeks after I got started. So it was very frustrating. It wasn't looking right. There were a lot of, I did a little research online, and people were complaining about the lace, and they even decided just to skip the lace and just work on a different lace altogether, or just skip the lace. And one of the biggest complaints, if you can see here, is this ladder effect. This is the side and the beginning and the end, and people really hated that. And I did too in the beginning, but if you notice, once it scrunches up, it's not even noticeable. And no one's going to notice that. My only concern is that these little threads in the middle might snag or maybe break. And if that ever happens, I'm just going to do a little, I guess I cord it off. We'll just get rid of the lace altogether. But I worked for about 10 hours on the lace. It was coming out wrong because I was following the wrong directions, of course. And so I decided, you know what, I'm just going to ball it up and think about it. It can't be that hard. I'm just doing something wrong. But it turned out that the directions were wrong. I was sent the correct directions by Brooklyn Tweed, who sells the pattern. And once I got going, and once you get past the inset lace, it's pretty smooth going. There were a lot of new techniques for me. It was kind of, at the time it was a little frustrating, but now I feel very proud that I feel like I mastered. I had used the crochet provisional cast on, and that is because you're going to go back and you're going to do the I-cord bind off, which is really a beautiful, beautiful finish. And I think I'm going to start using that for other projects. That is a beautiful finish, because at times when you use ribbing, it kind of puckers and gives you kind of a balloony effect. Short rows was used the German method, and that's different because instead of turning and wrapping, you do a slip and pull, and it's very pretty. You can see how it's wider, and then it progresses to where it's narrower. Very narrow. Okay. Now, my daughter tried on the sweater at Blazing Needles. It's a very pretty shop in Salt Lake City. They were having a trunk show. And she tried it on. She liked the fit. And she didn't like the recommended yarn, which is Loft, and that's a wool. So the shop owner recommended we use a linen, which is a fingering chain plied, and that's a fingering weight, and then a lace weight, which is 70% super baby alpaca and 30% fine merino wool, and they're both from Shibui. It's a Japanese company, and Shibui means elegant with a touch of bitterness. And what woman doesn't want to feel that describes them? Elegant with a touch of bitterness. Very good. This combination, the linen and the alpaca and the wool, it creates a very light, very crisp texture, almost like a chainmail, if you can think of medieval. And also, if you look at it kind of reminds you of a monk or a peasant top. Very, very simple, very clean, and very nice, very light, not scratchy, but still has a lot of body because of the linen. And I'd always been worried about linen, that it might break easily, but it turned out to make a beautiful, beautiful fabric. And you can see the architectural influences from Kirsten's job. Look at the slim lines. I also think of Bridge with all the little girders and maybe the steel suspension lines. Very, very sleek. Also, another thing about Loft, if you do a little bit of research, especially I had to, because I was having problems with the lace inset. I did quite a bit of research. People were complaining that Loft, which is produced by Brooklyn Tweed, tended to break easily. So I'm glad I used this. I'll let you know in a few years about the wear and the tear. Well, I hope you enjoyed my critique of Element by Kirsten Johnstone. I hope my daughter enjoys wearing this now that she's a married woman. I started a little bit after the wedding, which was the mid-July, put it aside, picked it back up around August, and today is November 8th. So it took me about 3 months, and I worked on other projects, charity projects in between. So it's really it's a commitment. You may have to concentrate, but you end up with a beautiful, beautiful garment. But I'm going to be honest, I feel free. I feel like I am free. Lordy, Lordy, thank you. I'm free at last. I'm going to start working on small projects and set aside the big projects for a while. I hope you enjoyed my talk with you and, the story of this project.